We are the Muslim Ummah, and each day that goes by, the harder we try. In gratitude we pray to Allah. Chosen as part of the best of mankind, we spread the word of Islam. Each man at each hour, in awe of his power, each flower, each tree.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and welcome back to our exciting journey through the heritage of Europe, the hidden heritage, the Islamic heritage of Europe. And we have come to episode 24. I'm Dr. Stef Keris Abu Yasser, and I'm the author of the book Europe's Forgotten Ottoman Heritage, which concentrates on my home country, on Greece. So if you want to know more about Europe's forgotten heritage, especially in Greece, then please buy my book and take a look at my research that I've done in the last couple of years. Episode 24 wants to move away from the Nordic countries that we discussed in the last two episodes, and we would like to take a closer look to a very important country, the United Kingdom and Ireland. Now, let's go to the map again and take a look at where the UK can be found. United Kingdom, abbreviation UK. United Kingdom, Great Britain. Okay, we can see it's an island. And we can see a small part here. Well, this whole island here is Ireland. The yellow part is the Republic of Ireland, which is independent. And the pink part on top belongs to the United Kingdom. It's one of the four countries that make the United Kingdom. Now, it's simply called United Kingdom because there are four countries that are united. In the north, we have Scotland. Here we have England, which is the biggest part of the United Kingdom, the biggest country. And here we have Wales. Now, Northern Ireland, as I said again, Northern Ireland can be found in the north of Ireland, which is part of the United Kingdom, part of Great Britain. This country indeed plays an important role due to its past, present, and most probably also to its future. We should not forget that Great Britain used to have the biggest empire in our history, the biggest empire on this planet, bigger than the French. And this, of course, has left quite some heritage behind, quite some culture behind, quite some roots are there to be found. And of course, the Muslims played an important role in their empire because one of the biggest colony was India. And that time, Crown Colony India was not only the India that we know nowadays, but Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, the entire Indian subcontinent. So imagine Bangladesh and Pakistan, which is mostly Muslim, and a big minority of Muslims living in India. All these people were once part of the British Empire. And not only them, of course, but don't forget Africa. In Africa, the French played a big role, as we said already before, but the British were the second most important players in Africa. And because of nowadays English being the world language, and French is lagging behind, of course, English being the world language, you will also see in Africa ideas moving towards trying to learn as much English as possible, schools implementing the English language as second most important language after French, some even as most important, of course. So all this will play a role in the development of our planet. The Muslims in the United Kingdom play a big role also, simply because, not of the number, they're not that many. It's not as many as they are in Germany, for example, in number. The percentage of Muslims in the UK is not more than 4 to 5%, whereas in France it's 10 and more. But the might and the power of the Muslims in UK is totally different to the ones in France, although they are half the population there. In the UK, there is indeed a freedom of religion in many ways. In many ways, we can clearly say that there is a freedom of religion, in contrary to France, for example. In the United Kingdom, you will find Muslims practicing their religion freely. Of course, we will also encounter many problems, and of course, many of the cases that we have heard in the past, especially after September 11 and after the bombings of 2005, but we'll come back to that, especially after the London bombings, of course, this has changed the relationship between the Muslims and the non-Muslims in the UK. But in general, we can say that there is a freedom of religion in the UK, and this can be found. London, the capital of the UK, is even sometimes called Londonistan. Now, they refer to Londonistan as what they want to say basically is that it has become the center of the Muslim political world, or the Islamic political world, if you want to call it that way. What simply means we have a lot of opposition parties from outside that gather together in London, a lot of Muslims that act freely in that very capital, and we have so many mosques there that I don't even think that the number that I have here is right. The number that I have here, this is one of the sources that talk about 1,500 to 2,000 mosques, but London alone, the population is around 7 million. The population of Muslims is 10%, nearly, is around 650 to 700,000 Muslims in London alone. The second biggest city is Birmingham, where we will find a big percentage of Muslims as well. A lot of immigrants from Indo-Pakistan, as we said, that used to be the Crown Colony, the Indian Crown Colony, so for that reason many of them came to the UK in the 60s and 70s in search for work. Now, I have brought with me quite some pictures, and I would like to share them with you. Now, take a look at this one. First of all, the UK, as we just described it, a map of the UK and Ireland next to it. Now, this is a picture in Birmingham, which just shows you how multicultural UK has become. Even Birmingham is the second biggest city after London. Now, these are Chinese lanterns. This is Chinatown in Birmingham. This one is a part in Birmingham where you will find a big Muslim minority living, which has become basically a Muslim majority area. And you can find that even artists, Muslim artists, are free to operate in that country, and you see this graffiti on the wall. This is supported by the Birmingham City Council even. So the artist Muhammad Ali was given the okay, was even given money to go and draw on the walls, graffiti. It's incredible, isn't it? Now, let's move on. We can see again that's another graffiti in the same part of Birmingham, a Somali restaurant. The Somalians who came again after the 90s, many of them came after they left Holland and the Nordic countries where they got acquainted nationality and came over to the UK. Now, this is a very nice graffiti which I personally like very much. The remembrance of Allah. Remember me, I will remember you. Remembrance of God. Dhikr. Now, fantastic. This is in the center of Birmingham. This is in the center of this is in the UK. Imagine. Now, we will be able to find a lot of Islamic shops there, as you can see here now. Again, still in Birmingham, Islamic shops all over the place, bookshops, Muslim-owned shops and Muslim-owned businesses, restaurants, of course, and everything. Now, in London, the London Muslim Centre, quite a big centre in East London, well known all over the world, plays a very important role, is very active in educating the Muslim community. The East London Mosque here in the front of it. You can see the front of it, the main entrance. The mosque indeed plays a very, very, very important role in educating Muslims and non-Muslims alike. Non-Muslims about Islam, but sometimes even teaching community languages like Urdu, like English, and so on and so on. Now, this is another mosque in another part of London. You can see the typical Pakistani architecture or subcontinental, Indian subcontinental architecture. Now, and amazingly enough, we are in London and there is a sign showing us the way to London Central Mosque. Imagine, you are not in Dakar, you are not in Senegal, you are not in Bangladesh, you are not in Pakistan, you are not in India, but you are in the heart of Europe, you are in the UK, in the heart of the UK, you are in London. And it shows you where you can walk and how many minutes it takes you to go to London Central Mosque. Amazing. And the London Central Mosque is here in Regent's Park. Regent's Park Mosque, another name for it. Regent's Park, the heart of London. Imagine. Now, this mosque is a little bit older than 100 years even, or nearly 100 years actually, around. Now, imagine now the problems that we face in Greece, in Athens. They want to build an Islamic center. The Muslims have been wanting to do that for the last decades already. The Greek government still hasn't decided where to put it. They still don't know where to build it. And once the church came out with a comment like, if we build it at the airport, then, my God, when the tourists who come yearly to us, when they come to the airport, they will see a minaret. What will they think? They're somewhere in the Muslim world. We don't want that, of course. So imagine this comment. Imagine that people even think that. Imagine that people think that tourists who come to Greece will think that they're in a Muslim world. It's ridiculous because most of the tourists who come to Greece are even more educated than the Greeks themselves. So I would say this was a ridiculous remark, comment, which of course had to do in order to stir the emotional feelings again. Now, as we can see now, Ireland, the UK, we will come back to this inshallah again, but just to give you a general idea about Ireland, Dublin Mosque in the heart, in the capital of Ireland. Now, Ireland is known as being a Catholic country, no doubt about it. The biggest majority of people in Ireland are Catholics, are Christians, and are Catholics indeed. But there is a tiny, tiny minority of Muslims there. The Muslims say that they are in the range of around 33,000 Muslims, they say. The official data speaks about 25 to 30,000, around the same amount, no big difference, but they're not even 1% of the Irish population. Not even 1%. So, basically, in comparison to the UK, to their big mighty neighbor, and in comparison to the rest of Europe, Ireland is one of the countries that has the smallest minority of Muslims. And we'll come back after the break. Stay tuned.
Chosen as part of the best of mankind, we spread the word of Islam.
There is a very interesting hadith that talks about the verses of Aisha radiallahu anha. She says, I know myself I'm a sinner, but I'm afraid or I fear for my daughters. Please talk to them. Sister Khadija from Nigeria. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
I wonder who loved the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam most. You have to repeat them all because we discussed the difference of opinions. As the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, وَأَزْوَاجُهُ أُمَّهَاتُهُمْ. Their mothers, the mothers of the believers. Two main components, religious commitment and al-amana, in brief, represents the whole moral system. Akhlaq, manners.
Chosen as part of the best of mankind, we spread the word of Islam.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the second part of this episode. And we are at this moment in the UK and in Ireland. Ireland, as we have mentioned before, is actually a country which is well known as being the Christian Catholic country. And it is indeed true, it's not just a myth, but indeed the biggest majority of people living in Ireland, in the Republic of Ireland, are Catholics. But even there we can find a tiny minority of Muslims, as we said, in the range of 25 to 30, 33,000 people, who came to Ireland at the end of the 50s, beginning of the 60s, but they did not come as guest workers that time. That time, in this country, they did not come to work. There was no industry that would absorb them. No, they came as students. So the population and the influence of the Muslims and Islam to Irish society is very different to the influence of the Muslims and Islam to British society in the 60s. Imagine these people who came mainly from Asia to study, Malaysia, Indonesia, but also from some Arab countries. When they came to Ireland, their interest was, I come, I stay 3, 4, 5 years, do my BA, Masters, my PhD maybe, and then I go back to my home country where a good job is waiting for me. This is in general, that was in general the idea, that was a mindset. So they didn't go there to stay there. Of course, and at the beginning, even in the other countries, the Muslims who went as immigrants, they did not go to stay there forever. The idea was to go, stay there for a while and go back again. But in that case, it was clear from the beginning. It was a plan. I go as a student and I leave again. The first Islamic society in Ireland was established in 1959. It was formed by students studying in Ireland. It was called the Dublin Islamic Society. The Dublin Islamic Society, which still exists. This Dublin Islamic Society still exists, but under another name. It's nowadays called the Islamic Foundation of Ireland. There is an Islamic Foundation in Britain as well, but it's different to that one. The capital of Ireland, as we said before, Dublin, and of course most of the Muslims can be found in the capital, but also in other cities like Cork, where there's another bigger Muslim community. But the majority indeed can be found in the city, in the capital, in Dublin. Now, another photo just quickly about Dublin and Ireland. Now we can see the one that we saw before, Dublin, the Dublin Mosque, and this beautiful mosque here, also in Ireland. Also in Ireland. As we said before, Ireland has a very small population of Muslims, but also in general a very small population of people, 6.5 million, not more, not less. 6.5 million, one of the smallest countries in Europe, in the European Union, and definitely the country that has the tiniest minority of Muslims, together with Portugal. The present building of the Dublin Mosque that we saw before was bought in 1983, was renovated, and the headquarters of the society moved from Harrington Street to 163 South Circular Road in the center of Dublin, the one that we saw actually before. Now, the prayer halls, they are of course simply because of the nature of the Muslims, the students at universities and colleges, they needed prayer halls also at the university. So you will be able to find quite some prayer halls close to the universities and colleges, or even within the campuses of the universities, which also in the UK is the case. And the establishment of ISOCs, so-called ISOCs, Islamic societies, ISOCs, are a well-known fact in both countries, in the UK as well as in Ireland. Now, in 1992, a very important point, a gentleman called Musaji Bamji became the first, and at this moment still the only, Muslim member of Irish Parliament. Now, there are some more members of the Parliament in the UK, of the British Parliament, but in Ireland it is still something new, but still amazing. 1992, which is nearly 2 decades ago, actually 2 decades ago, the member of the Irish Parliament, a Muslim who of course has Irish nationality. With regards to converts, reverts in Irish society, there are no exact data, as we don't know exactly how many there are, but the ones that are there do play an important role, and simply because of their knowledge of the society, their being Irish citizens already, of course, that puts them in an advantage, puts them in a bigger advantage, of course. So, as we can see, UK and Ireland in general, quite some freedom for the Muslims, quite some Muslims, quite a big Muslim population, not as big as in France and in Belgium, for example, or in other countries in Europe, but still they play actually a more important role in British society, for example, than they play in France, although they're not as many. In Ireland, we have had some incidents after September 11, and of course after the bombing in London, the sad tragedy 7/7/2005, the London bombings on the tube stations. That, of course, affected the situation, affected the relationship between the Muslims and the non-Muslims in Britain as well as in Ireland. And after that, we have had several incidents of Muslims being harassed on the street, Muslims being insulted, and even we have had some killings from right-wing extremists. Now, this is, of course, the other side of the story. We do have quite some incidents in the UK, throughout the UK, but in places, in London too, but in places where the Muslim minority is quite small and not known. Now, in Birmingham, for example, a bigger city where there is a quite big Muslim minority, or in certain parts of London, in East London, in South London, in Tooting, in these areas, there are not many incidents, although there are racist incidents that happened in the past and might most probably still happen in the future, but in a much lower scale than in France, for example. The Muslims as a community, it is very, very difficult to look at them as one community. As I said before, they come from different parts of the world. They come from Asian countries, they come from African countries. In the Netherlands, we have seen some of them, they even come from the Caribbean, from Suriname. Some others come from Guyana. In Britain also you will find, because Guyana used to be a British colony, which is in South America, next to Suriname, in the Caribbean basically. So these people who came to the UK, who came to Ireland, who came to Europe in general, brought, of course, their culture also with them. And we are not here to judge who is a good Muslim or a bad Muslim. That's not the point here. The point is that we have at this moment a Muslim community, or if you want to use a plural, Muslim communities, or Muslims with different ethnic backgrounds, but they all adhere to Islam. And they all would love to have an Islamic center, would like to basically have a focus point. And at this moment, if we compare the UK to the rest of Europe, I think the only country at this moment, or the country which has given the Muslims most rights and freedom, is indeed the UK. In Ireland, alhamdulillah, as I said, there are not many, the Muslims are not many, and most of them are at universities and colleges, and of course the context that they have with the population there is more on an intellectual basis, so that of course makes a different way, but gives a different perspective to the Irish population, and an Irish Catholic Christian looks at Islam, I'm very, very sure, looks at Islam in a different way than the British average person. But in general, of course, the media, they have done their job and they are playing their role. And we have had, as I said before, quite some incidents, and are having on a daily basis, unfortunately, incidents also in the UK and also in Ireland and in other parts of Europe that we mentioned before. The racist parties, the BNP, for example, in the UK, is growing, but the biggest threat at this moment for a cooperative relationship, for a good relationship for Muslims and non-Muslims, the ones that are challenging this type of relationship is actually the EDL, the English Defence League, which developed in the last couple of years and has shown that they're quite aggressive. The members of the EDL are quite aggressive and are very, very active, unfortunately, in a negative way, very active, and they have shown that they are ready to involve violence if needed to. This, of course, the development of the EDL in the UK and the development of other racist parties, but especially the EDL, this, of course, had an effect also in the rest of Europe. Because the Northern Europeans, for example, and the Central Europeans are looking up to Britain in many ways. And they see that, well, if they have problems there, then what about us here? If in general the idea of Britain is Britain being a tolerant society towards the Muslims, but then suddenly we have the EDL coming up, suddenly we have quite some people quite some British voices coming out and saying things which are Islamophobic or xenophobic. That, of course, encourages the rest of the population in Europe to follow them and just basically just doing what they are doing. So, unfortunately, we've come to the point to say that indeed the one affects the other, and as soon as something negative comes out, as soon as we see that a racist party develops or racism is spread more, then we will see also the other countries following, unfortunately. But when it's positive, we don't see that, unfortunately, happening. We don't see when there's something positive happening in one country, the other country following it straight away. The headscarf affair was a very important point. That's what happened in France, and that had an influence, that influenced, and its influence is still the rest of Europe and also the UK, because they are now sitting discussing if they should actually also ban the niqab. There is, of course, much, much more to talk about, but unfortunately we've come to the end of this episode, and I'm hoping that this has been a very beneficial episode, especially talking about the UK and Ireland, and hope to see you in the next episode, inshallah, when we're going further to the south. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
We are the Muslim Ummah, and each day that goes by, the harder we try. In gratitude we pray to Allah. Chosen as part of the best of mankind, we spread the word of Islam. Each man at each hour, in all of his power, each flower, each tree, everything that we see. Spread the word, oh man. Spread the word of Islam. Oh, fortunate one, paradise must be won.